So I'm going to talk about early literacy development and then the way that I plan and deliver my instruction to make sure kids get exactly what they need when they're in the preschool and kindergarten years. The first thing that you saw a lot of in the activities that I did tonight was phonological awareness. And that's the foundation for reading instruction. If you think about how houses are built, you always want to make sure that a house has a strong foundation that it's built on, or it won't last for a long time. And we feel the same way about teaching kids how to read. We want to make sure that we give them a solid foundation. And the research has shown that that is done through phonological awareness instruction. And that when we teach kids these skills in their early years, they're later very successful at reading. The research also shows that kids who miss out on these foundational skills have trouble with decoding, spelling, and comprehension when they get into the middle elementary grades. So we really want to make sure that we practice these when they're young children. And this is all done auditorily. So like you saw with the 3-year-olds and the 4-year-olds today, the activities that I did were all verbal activities, and we did not link them to print yet. So phonological skills are introduced and taught on a continuum. So it starts in preschool, and then through that early elementary grades, kids learn more complex skills. The first skill that's important to introduce to young children around 3 or 4 years of age is the concept of a spoken word. When kids hear languages, there's lots of words, and often we speak very quickly, and we want them to understand where one word ends and another begins. So we start by counting the words in a sentence. I might say, the cat is brown, and have the children count the words with me. The cat is brown. Then we can say that sentence has 4 words. Knowing that helps us when we're starting to read words so that we can track the print and read and point to one word at a time. And when we're starting to write, so that when we have an idea, we can break it down to sound out and write one word at a time. So we start practicing counting those words in sentences in preschool. We also practice rhyming, like you saw in my activity with the 3-year-olds. Rhyming is really important so that kids can hear and manipulate words. By changing the beginning sound, we can come up with lots of rhyming words. That, cat, hat, and mat. We practice it in lots of different ways, and as kids start to get it, it becomes more challenging. So first, like today, we look at pictures and act out rhyming words like bell and smell. Then kids have to finish sentences in books and poems with rhyming words. So I might say, the tree is so fall and I see the leaf on it about to, and I would stop for them to think about what makes next and say, fall, the tree is so tall, I see the leaf about to fall. Then we want kids to be able to come up with rhyming words of their own. That builds vocabulary also, to think of a word that rhymes with book. That's a real word, like cook or took. We also do activities where we count the syllables in words, like I did with the 4-year-olds tonight. Counting syllables is really important as kids learn to read more complex books and start to write more complex sentences. I use the Orton-Gillingham method of phonics instruction, which really shows that the best way to teach kids to read is to decode words syllable by syllable. By knowing where a syllable starts and ends, we can decode in English how to read the vowels. It might be a short vowel sound or it might be a long vowel sound. So these activities that we're doing, like counting the syllables in penguin, are really building the foundation for identifying syllables and words and decoding multisyllabic words to read and write later on. We also practice in my early literacy classes phoneme isolation and segmentation. To begin reading and writing, kids have to first hear the different sounds and words. We have to be able to say that bat begins with b, and after we can identify the beginning sound, we want to say the ending sound. Bat ends with t. Then we go to the middle sound, the vowels, which are the trickiest in the English language because they can be spelled in different ways and make different sounds. When kids can do that auditorily, and we can play those games out loud. Then they're ready to begin linking it to print. And we can start writing words like bat, because they know that bat is made out of b, at. And we can know that we have to write 3 sounds to spell it. These are always taught and practiced in developmentally appropriate ways when children are ready. When they're 3 and 4 and 5 years old, we want to make it fun. And we also know that's how kids learn best. For their attention span, we want to keep it moving. And so their bodies are moving, like you saw when we were acting out different animals. They're responding with different actions like clapping, putting their hand under their chin to count syllables, and responding with fingers. That's also a way that I check to see that all children are understanding. It's important in my classes that I know where each child is at, so I can make sure to go back if they need to, or to move faster if that's what they need. Good literacy instruction also has 5 different components that are phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. And so lessons are going to address all of these different components, which seems like a lot, but it's perfect because, as you know, your children, they move very fast and they're ready to move on from one thing to the next very quickly. And so one of my lessons might start with a phonics warm-up. In my 3- and 4-year-old classes, we use physical phonics, where every letter of the alphabet is combined with an action. That gets our bodies moving, but also practices this component. So we might say A, alligator, B, bed, C, car, D, door, E, elephant, and dance our way through the alphabet to make sure we know what the letters of the alphabet are and what sounds they all make. The next component is phonemic awareness, and that's manipulating the individual sounds in words. Often in my classes, when children are ready to start linking the sounds to print, they'll have little letters of the alphabet like this. And we will build words together so they can move the letters. They might pull off the B, the A, and the T to spell bat. And then I'll tell them, take off the B and put on a K. Then they see that by changing the first sound, bat can become cat. We can also change the last sound to make a new word. By activities like this, children are learning hands-on with the letters right in front of them and seeing all the ways that we can manipulate the sounds in words to make new words. The third component is vocabulary, and that's really important for young children. They love new words and they learn to apply them very quickly when we teach them in multisensory ways. So we always act out new words, we use them in sentences, we think about pictures, sometimes we draw them to make sure that the children have a deep understanding of new words. We use the words in context with other words. If we're learning the word curtains, we're going to think about where you have curtains in your house, what curtains do. So we want kids to not only know words, but to be able to explain how they are, how they work, where you find them, so that they're able to understand and comprehend those words when they see them or hear them in stories. The fourth component is fluency. We want kids to read and eventually be able to read so their reading sounds like talking. In my 5-year-old activity, you saw that we practice reading words sound by sound. That's called decoding, and that's how kids learn how to read. We say dot, dot. But the goal is for kids to eventually read and see the word and say dot without sounding it out. So by practicing reading those words every day like that, they get a lot faster and it builds fluency. And we can practice it in lots of fun ways. We don't want it to get boring for the kids. We want them to stay engaged. So we might do that with the shark swimming on the PowerPoint to see if they can beat the shark. We might have a list of words that they write and then they have to read back quickly. And the fifth part is comprehension. And that's the most important because comprehension is the goal for reading. Ultimately, we want kids to learn how to read so they can understand and enjoy whatever they're reading. So we want to make sure that whenever stories are read to kids or when kids are reading to us, they're understanding. So in my lessons, we make sure to ask really good questions and have kids be able to, in complete sentences, answer questions and retell what they're reading or learning about. Those are the 5 parts that we want to make sure we address to make sure kids are getting a well-rounded instruction in literacy and everything that they need to have a solid foundation. There's lots of best practices in literacy instruction that comes from a lot of research that they've done on how the brain works and how kids learn and retain information. What the research shows is that lessons that are hands-on and multi-sensory are the best for kids to ingrain ideas into their long-term memory. So if we have 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds starting to learn letter formation, they might learn by writing in sand. I often suggest that you put sand or sugar in a small container for your child, and we might practice making the letter C in the sand, because the feeling of the sand on their finger gives them a sensory experience, and it makes the formation of that letter more memorable. If we make it and combine it with the sound, C says K, it's more likely to stick. And so we'll practice in lots of hands-on ways. We might practice in the sand, or I might suggest that you get a bumpy screen like this. It's something that the kids can put under their paper. If we practice writing our letters with this under our paper, it gives your kid's hand an experience of forming those letters that's more memorable. And we want to make sure that we do everything we can to help them remember the correct way. My classes also have a lot of repetition by repeating things. Sometimes we say C says K, C says K, 4 or 5 times as we're practicing. It really allows the students to learn it deeply and master it. We want to make sure that before we move on, the students really understand the previous concepts. When they do that, they're able to apply them in new ways more readily. So that's why at the beginning of every class, we may do the phonics dance. The more they do it, the better they know it. And then they'll be able to apply it when they're ready to read and write. We also want to make sure, like I said, that we're responsive to students, and that if they already know it, we move forward. And if they need more practice, then we find fun ways to practice it and new ways. We want to make sure that kids get to practice in lots of new ways so it's engaging and keeps their attention. We also want lots of opportunities for fine motor development, especially when children are 3 and 4 years old. We want them to build the muscles in their fingers and hands so that when they get to 5 years old in kindergarten, they're able to correctly hold the pencil and have the stamina to start writing multiple sentences at a time. So we might have them cutting out things. We might have them do some exercises that are brain breaks to move their body, but are also building those muscles in their hands so that they're ready for writing sentences in kindergarten. My classes also integrate other skills in academic areas. Like you saw in the syllables activity, we were counting the syllables and responding with how many. We might count the letters in our name or the words in a sentence. We might count the sounds in words. There's lots of ways to integrate math. And then as we begin reading and comprehending, we can incorporate science and other areas that are interesting to the students, which makes the classes more engaging and makes the students excited to learn and come to class. The goal is that learning is fun. We want kids to love books and love reading. It was so exciting to see so many of them raise their hands that they love books at the beginning of class. Are there any questions that I can answer? I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got a question. My daughter is 2.5 years old, so she barely cannot recognize ABC actually. So do you think we can take this class?
I think the 3-year-old class would be a great foundation. We start singing the ABC song and linking those letters to the letters on our alphabet chart and acting them out. So it's a really good way to start learning those.
Okay, thank you so much, because she is very interested in the class, so I just want to know. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Are there any other questions? I want to also give you some examples of things that you can do at home to help your child's early literacy development. There's lots of things that you're probably already doing already that are great, and they're helping give your child a strong foundation for reading and writing. The most important thing you can do is read to your child and talk about books. When you're reading, I suggest sometimes giving your child the book to hold and have them turn the pages when it's time. This way they learn directionality and the way that we turn the pages when we're reading books. You can also read books with rhyming words, and that helps kids to begin to hear rhyme before we practice it explicitly in class. This is a good time to build vocabulary because you're often going to read books where your kids are going to come to words they don't know, and they can learn new words. A great thing to do after you finish a story is to hand the book to your child and have them go through the pictures and retell you what happened. That helps to show you that they understood the story and that they remembered the details. So reading every day is a great place to start. Also, letters are everywhere. So you can start by recognizing and pointing out the words in print in their environment. Maybe you have a sign with their name in their room and you talk about the letters in their name. Or maybe you look at your street sign when you're going for a walk and you read the word to them and talk about the first letter in it. Or if you're going to a store, you can talk about the first letter in the name of the store and the sound it makes. That's a great way to just begin giving your kid some exposure to early literacy skills. When your kids are ready, you can give them meaningful opportunities to write. If they're 3 or 4 years old, maybe they're going to start writing by making cards to mail to other members of your family, or drawing pictures to make a grocery list for what you need at the grocery store. And as they get older, they might be able to write the words for the list, or at least the beginning sounds for the items that you need. So they might write an M to show that you need milk, and a B to show that you need bread. Playing games is also a great way. If you're driving in the car, you can play I Spy. I spy something that starts with a B sound, and have your child guess. Maybe it was a bus that you saw. You can make it into a game to see how many words you can think of that rhyme with dog and go back and forth with your child. It doesn't have to take a long time, but little bits here and there give your child lots of good exposure to these skills. And lastly, we want to just give them opportunities to build fine motor skills, which they love to do because a lot of that is through play, which is what kids do best. They can do puzzles, they can build with Legos, they can use Play-Doh, cutting with scissors, stringing beads onto a necklace. Those are all great ways that they have to use the fine muscles in their hands and build strength. So those are things that you can do at home to help your child be ready for reading and writing. And I'm sure you're doing lots of those already naturally. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions I can answer?
I would like to ask a question, actually. So, so some kids are writing, like when they start writing, they're writing mirror image. Like they're writing 3, they're writing this way, right? You're doing this way, right? He just did this way.
I'm 6.
Yeah, I know, but you're still doing it. And he writes not from top to bottom, like from bottom to top.
Right.
So, I mean, like, I don't know what should we do about it.
So that's really common. And what the research shows is that kids have always seen things before they learn to read and write, only in space. So if they see me standing here, it doesn't matter if I'm facing this way or if I'm facing this way, I still look like me. So kids haven't learned, if they're still doing that, that when we put a 3 backwards, it doesn't mean the same thing as when we put a 3 forwards. So what they just need is practice. And so my recommendation is just to bring it to their attention and say, hey, let me show you. It's actually this way. It doesn't say 3 if we make it the other way. Because developmentally, it's really common, and they have to just learn that it's not the same as objects that we see in space.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? Do you have a question? What do you want to comment?
Just science.
We do have, Ms. Jacqueline, we do have parents ask us before that what kind of books they should read to their children because they really want a specific book recommendation, like a book list. I don't know if you have some suggestion on that.
Absolutely. Any books are great to read to your children, especially if it's something that they're interested in. We want kids to love books. So if your child loves animals, get lots of books about animals. If your child loves unicorns, find books about unicorns at the library. Beyond that, for kids that are 3 and 4 years old, a great way to expose them to the alphabet is to look for alphabet books. And you can do an Amazon search or a search in the library catalog for alphabet books. And those are a great way to teach the alphabet because they all have a page for every letter of the alphabet. And often on the A page, there's an alligator, so you can start linking it to the sound. So alphabet books are great. And then any books that rhyme. There's so many great children's books that rhyme. Kids love hearing them because of the pattern in the words, and it's great to expose them to rhyming language.
Thank you. And by reading those books, you mean that parents read to them or let their children read to the parents?
I would say at this age, that especially 3 and 4 years old, parents, you can be reading to your children. And then as they get to be 5 years old, they might start reading parts of books or whole books to you. But even at 5 and 6 years old, kids still love to be read to. And it's great to read to them because they're still learning how to read. As parents, you can read them more complex stories and practice comprehension skills. So definitely keep reading to your kids, even as they're learning how to read, so you can practice those comprehension skills with harder texts.
Is there a point where parents should stop reading to them?
I would say as long as your kid is interested, keep reading together. As they get into 1st and 2nd grade, you'll often see that kids want to read more, and that's great. So you can take turns, but having an adult there to talk about it and to make sure that the kids are understanding, especially as they get into chapter books, is really important. Because lots of times as we get into those harder books, as kids are in 1st and 2nd grade, there's a lot more meaning, and we want to make sure that if there's a joke, the kid understands the joke and knows that it's funny. If the author has a message or something to learn, that the kid understands what they're saying. So it's definitely great to keep reading to your kid all the way through the early elementary years.
Thank you. 大家还有什么别的问题吗?
Hi, I have a question. So because most of our kids probably are bilingual in certain way, and then they are very young. So my kid, for example, she is really good in terms of Mandarin. If you read a book, she can repeat the book and she understands what we're saying. But we just introduced English to her and we pulled her out of daycare because of the COVID environment. And I'm just wondering, when we were reading to her in English, sometimes she will say, can you read this to me in Mandarin? Is that more confusing to her, or should we finish the reading by using English and then translate everything all over again in Mandarin? Or how does it work?
I would say do one at a time so she can understand. And like if you're reading in English and she's ready for it, you can start tracking the print and pointing to the words. It's good for kids to see the flow of the words in English and then do Mandarin separate. And it's great to do reading in both. They can practice skills in both, but I would say do one at a time.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.